everyone. Thank you for joining our training session today. We're going to go over the WIP management application within Sage Intacct for construction. So we will get started. So just to introduce myself, my name is Olivia Ramos. I am one of our senior Sage Intacct implementation consultants here at ETHOSystems. And I'm going to show you the WIP management application within Sage Intacct today. So just a couple of housekeeping items. The presentation is going to be, 30 to 45 minutes long. All the phone lines are muted. If you have any questions, if you can type it inside the question box. We have someone monitoring that, so they will be able to answer your questions. And if you want a copy of this presentation, just give us your email address in the question box and we'll get it over to you. All right, we have 2 additional webinars and trainings coming up this year. So we are going to have a release webinar on November 7th. So that's going to show you all the new things and updates that has been done in release 4. And then we also are going to have one on the year-end processing. So things that you need to do for the end of the year, and that's going to be December 19th. All right. So on today's session, we're going to review the best practices inside Sage Intacct to make sure that your work in progress schedule works well. We're going to review the functionality, and then we're going to have a Q&A session at the end. Okay, so the first thing I want to go through is estimates. So the Sage Intacct WIP management functionality uses project estimates. Some of you might have it's renamed the jobs application. It might be job estimates, but they use those to help in the WIP calculation. So the first thing you need to make sure is that you are configured to use project estimates and that it's configured properly. You also need to make sure that your estimates are posting to the project estimate budget repository. And then lastly, you want to make sure any other supplemental reports you have that they're pulling the proper estimate budget repository as well. So I'm going to share my screen. We're going to take a look at my Sage Intacct here. Okay, so in here, you'll notice I'm in the projects application. Again, some of you might have, it might say jobs here, but you'll notice right here, I have project estimates. So we want to make sure that we have all of our project estimates entered for our projects that are going to be on the WIP. There are a couple things that I do want everyone to be aware of. First thing is you need to make sure that you have an estimate type. I have a type of current estimate. The reason why is because I want to see the original estimate, any revisions, and all approved change orders. I want all of those to summarize into the total cost estimate for this project. You will notice too that I have the checkbox checked here for primary. This is going to be the budget that is used for all reporting purposes. And so this is the budget that I want to use, or the estimate I want to use on the WIP schedule. So you'll need to make sure that that is done as well. And last but not least, you will want to make sure to post this to the GL budgets. And you should have a budget repository set up for project estimates. So I have that one here. And then you can pick the appropriate posting period. My recommendation is to pick this one, which is the estimate entry effective date. This one gives you the most flexibility to do reporting in various points throughout the year. So then that way you can see how your project estimate has changed from one month to the next, and so on and so forth. And then down below, you have your project estimate. So you can see I have my project estimate here. You can manually type this in. This also can be imported. So there is some flexibility there. And there are some softwares, estimating softwares that will create a file that you can then import into Sage Intacct. Also too, if they don't, a lot of times we can help you create an import file from whatever estimating software you might be using. All right. Okay, the next piece is contracts. In order for WIP management to work, you have to use project contracts. So similar to project estimates, you need to make sure that it is configured properly. And you need to make sure that those project contracts are posting to the project contract budget repository. And you want to make sure that they're set up to post to the correct project contract budget repository. So I'm going to go ahead and show that here now. Okay, so again, I'm in the projects application, and I'm going to come over here and I'm going to go to project contracts. So in here, you will see all my different project contracts that I have set up in this particular environment. So we'll just go into this one first here. So in here, you'll notice a couple of things. So the first is it is marked as billable. Okay, so that is one of the requirements for it to show up, is that it is marked as billable. And then I have the integrate with GL. I do have the post to GL budgets checkbox checked. And then you'll notice I have a budget repository selected for each of these options. All right, so right now I have 4 different budget repositories. This is really for reporting purposes. If you want to pick just one for all of these options, you definitely can. But by having different budget repositories per the different types of items that come through on your project contract, the more reporting capabilities you'll have. So now if I wanted to add columns for original, approved, and pending change orders on any financial reports, I would be able to have the flexibility to do so. And then similar to the project estimates, I have also selected the entry effective date for the same reason. I want to be able to run reports in the past, look at things as they have changed over time, and this is the most effective way to do that. Okay, and then below you'll notice that I have my different line items on my project contract. So these are, sometimes you'll hear your schedule of values. This is essentially your schedule of values for your project contract. So I have that here and it's all set up. So I have a total contract, original contract price of $504,000. This one has had some approved change orders against it of $5,300. Now I have my revised contract price. And this is what's going to pull into the WIP management application. All right. So let me put my screen back here. Okay. So next thing is let's start getting into how to actually configure and set up the WIP management functionality inside Sage Intacct. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to go into the projects or job application and you're going to go into configuration. And inside configuration, you're going to see a piece that says work in progress management. And in there, you're going to set up certain things like which general ledger accounts are your cost accounts, which general ledger accounts are your revenue accounts, which one is your under and over billing accounts, and what is your revenue adjustment account. And then it's also going to have you select a posting journal. You'll notice in here we have one called WIP. We suggest that you create a unique posting journal for your WIP entries when they post into the general ledger. So like this, in the example here, we have WIP. That way you can tell differently from all your other regular standard journals that these are transactions that were generated by the WIP. And then you get to decide when the WIP entry reverses automatically. I picked the beginning of the next period, but you can either pick the beginning or you can pick the end of the following period. Okay, so those are your two options there. Okay, also in here, inside the project application, there is a window that's called, or a menu prompt that's called the WIP project settings. And in there, it's going to show you all of your projects that are inside Sage Intacct. And what you're going to do is you're going to go through and select which jobs you want to show up on the WIP schedule. Okay, so the screen looks something like this. And when you select a job, you'll have a couple of options. So when you are going to select to include that, you want to figure out, do I want to put this job on its own line? Do I want to put it as part of a root project, or do I want to include it as part of other projects? So what that really means is, let's say you have projects that have a parent-child relationship. Maybe you want to roll all those children up to the parent. Then you would pick the second option, include as part of a root project. Okay, because then that will roll all the children up to the parent project and just put the summation of all those projects on one line under the parent project job ID on your WIP schedule. Include as part of other project. Let's say you have a lot of projects that are maybe similar. They don't necessarily have a parent-child relationship, but for you, you want to look at them all together. Then what you can do is you can select those different projects and then pick this option, include as part of other projects. And then again, it will take all those projects and summarize them and put them on one line in your WIP schedule. And I've put that information in here for you in this slide so you can see kind of what that means. And then obviously, if you accidentally selected a project that you don't want to be on the WIP schedule, you can hit the exclude button. It'll take it off, especially as your WIP is crossing into a new fiscal year. Obviously, there are going to be ones that are closed and you want to exclude them from your WIP for the current year. Okay, once you have selected your project, then you're going to create your WIP schedule. And in order to do that, you're going to go inside WIP Management, and that is one of the menu options that will be available for you now. So here is a screenshot I have of this December WIP schedule. I've got all my different projects that I wanted on this WIP, and you can see there's various columns in here that you'll be able to see within the WIP. So real quickly, I'm going to go over what each of these columns are and where the data is pulling from inside of Sage Intacct. Okay, so the first two columns are the estimated cost to date and the total contract value. So at the beginning of this training, I talked about how you need to be using project estimates and you need to be using project contracts. Project estimates pre-fill in the estimated cost to date column. Project contracts pre-fill in the total contract value column. So if you're using those properly, then those columns will automatically fill in with the most up-to-date information through the period you selected on your WIP schedule. Okay, so if I am doing financials for the month of September, but I've already entered change orders in October, if my WIP is dated through September of 24, it's not going to pick up any activity in October. Okay, so it's always going to be the most up-to-date information through the month that I selected on my WIP settings. The next column is your job to date cost. So this is going to be a summation of all the costs from the beginning of the life of the job until your cutoff date on your WIP schedule. And that's determined by those cost accounts that you selected inside the WIP Management project configuration settings. Okay, so you'll notice I showed a little screenshot here down at the bottom. Those were the accounts I told Sage Intacct to pull, and that is what creates this total here in the job to date costs. Next are your job to date billings. So similar to your job to date costs, whatever account or accounts I selected in the revenue section of the work in progress management settings, that's what's going to display here in the job to date billings. So again, it's life to date billings on the project through the date that I've selected on my WIP. Okay, the next two columns I want to make you aware of are the CFO forecast columns. So there's two here that I'm showing, the cost at completion and the contract value forecast. This is a way for you to override the values that are pulling in automatically from Sage Intacct. Okay, so it's pulling project estimates and it's pulling project contracts. You can have those values pre-fill here in the CFO forecast columns, and then you can change them. So if you know that a project is going to be under budget, I can come in here and change the cost to completion, the cost at completion to maybe be a lower number to pull in that extra revenue that I'll be earning because the job is under budget. Or maybe I have some pending change orders that I haven't gotten the signed one, but I know I'm going to get it and I've already incurred the costs already. So maybe I want to make sure that I adjust my contract for those things that I know I'm going to get. Okay, so this allows you to make those changes without actually having to change your contract and without actually having to change your budget. Okay, and then these values are used to calculate your over under billings and earned revenue calculations. All right, and then you have all your calculated columns. So shows your revenue earned to date, what you've billed this year, how much revenue you've earned this year, and then your over and under billing for this year on the associated projects. Okay, so if you would like to understand more about how these columns are calculated, there is this really great help article that I have notated here, and it shows you, it explains how each of these columns are calculated. Okay, so it's really helpful. Okay, so let's go ahead and see the WIP in action. So I'm going to go ahead and come over here. All right, so in here, we're going to go to setup, and you'll notice configuration. Now, please note you will need to be a project administrator to be able to get into this area. You can always have one of your consultants here at Ethos help you with this if you want this set up as well. So down at the very bottom, you will notice this new section, the work in progress management section. And in here, this is where I'm going to put those different settings in. So I've selected my cost accounts that I want calculated in the WIP, my revenue account, and I've picked my cost in excess, billing in excess, and my revenue adjustment accounts as well. And then, like we talked about earlier, I have this WIP journal that's separate from all my standard journals, so that way I can easily identify the WIP entries. And then it's going to auto reverse. That's the way the Sage Intacct WIP has been designed. So I've chosen the beginning of the next period. You can choose the end of the next period. It's really personal preference at this point. Okay. It's really easy to add an account. You'll just come here, you'll say add and edit. You'll pick the appropriate accounts that need to be inside your cost or revenue accounts. All the ones you selected will go on this right-hand side. When you're done, you'll hit done, and now those accounts are in there. Once you've got this all set up, then you're going to go ahead and hit save. And then the WIP management function will be enabled for you at that point. One thing I do want to make sure that you do is when you're in here, make sure as a user, you come into the projects application and you give yourself security rights to the new WIP functionality, which I think I just passed it. Oh, there it is, WIP management. So you would want to make sure to check these so you would be able to have access to the WIP, okay, and save it. All right, next, again, in the projects or jobs application, on the All tab, you'll notice these two new menu prompts. So the first one we discussed was this WIP project settings. So if I come in here, you will notice it's showing all of my different projects. So I am going to check the box, sorry, on the jobs that I want to include on my WIP. Okay. If I want to have all of them, I can check this checkbox at the top left-hand corner, and it's going to select everything that it views. Now, you can only add 100 projects at a time. So if you are a company that has, several projects that are on a WIP schedule, then you might have to come and select, 100 projects at a time. Might take a little time, but once a project is on there, it's always going to be on the WIP. You don't have to do this every single month. You just have to do this one time. And then once you've got all the jobs, if they've closed, then you could just remove them as needed at that point. Okay. Like I discussed earlier, we can decide how we want this particular project to display on the WIP. So we'll pick the appropriate selection, and then that's how it will go to my WIP schedule. Okay. You'll notice here too that this says the WIP schedule project ID and the WIP schedule name. What that means is all of these jobs are on my WIP schedule, but these two you'll notice are blank. It means these two have not been selected to be put on the WIP schedule. Okay, so if you're ever wondering why you don't see a particular project, it's either one, it wasn't selected, or if you do see that it was selected, it might not be showing up because there is no costs or no billings during that time period. Okay, so I see some people get hung up why isn't this project showing? Why isn't this project showing? I see it here. it's because it didn't have costs or it didn't have billings yet. So try to keep that in mind, because that is one thing that I see people kind of spin in circles on, trying to figure out why a project isn't showing up. Okay, so I have selected my projects. You see them here. Now I'm going to go inside of WIP Management. Now you'll notice I have two work in progress schedules created, one for the end of December 2022, one for the end of December 2023. To create a new WIP management, you're just going to hit the create button. If you're in a multi-entity environment, you'll select which entity this WIP schedule is for. And then you're going to pick the period that you want this WIP to be as of. Okay, so maybe I want this to be as of November. Okay, so again, it's going to pull all the information from the beginning of the job through November 30th of 2023. Okay, all right. You'll notice here, it's got all the jobs that I've selected. There's a couple of errors here in red, and then all this other information is pre-filled. Okay, one thing right away, I do have estimates and contracts in here, but there is no information here inside the CFO forecast columns. So to update those, I'm going to select all my jobs. The first thing is I'm going to tell the software to update the PM values with the project values, which are these values here. And then you'll notice that didn't do anything. These still are blank. Then I'm going to pick this option to update the CFO values with the PM values. So I'm going to select that here, and you'll notice it pre-fills those items. So a little bit of a two-step process. They are continually improving and making adjustments to this WIP functionality. And one of the things that they want to do in the future is allow your project managers to be able to put like their estimated costs in, and then you as the CFO or controller can then override that and make the final determination on what you want to be in those values for the revenue adjustment. Okay, so here I've got these values in here. So I can go ahead and change these. Now you'll notice on this particular project right now, it says I have 25 million earned to date. Well, let's say I change this. Let's say we're going to be under budget on this project. Notice how my earned to date revenue has changed. Now I've earned 26 million, and that's all because of what I've changed here. So the estimated costs are still the same, but it's calculating based on my forecast of what I say the project is going to complete at. And that's what's determining the revenue earned. And that's also what's determining the over under billings as well. Okay, you also have a place where you can add comments. So if you're having several people review it, maybe you have a WIP review meeting with management or with the project managers, things of that nature. You can put comments down, ask questions, everybody can view it on the screen. It makes it nice. And then you can choose whether or not you want to finalize a job. When you finalize a job, it prevents that particular job from being modified. So all of these columns would then be that I can fill in, they would all be locked down and I wouldn't be able to change them. The other thing is you have the option to refresh your work in progress schedule. So let me show you an example of that. So here's this December one that I have previously created. If I come here to edit it, you'll notice I have a refresh button. What that will do is it will go back into the system and it'll pull estimates, contracts, cost, and billings again, and make sure that I have the most up-to-date information through my period end date, which in this example is December of 2022. So let's say you notice like some billings were entered. You can go ahead, enter them in the system, refresh your WIP schedule, and now they'll be in these totals again. Okay. All right. But once you finalize them and you say this is finalized, even if I hit the refresh button, it is not going to refresh all these values. They're going to stay as is once a job has been finalized. So just a couple things to keep in mind here. All right. Once I've got my WIP the way I want it to, you can come in here and take a look at the posting preview. I would recommend that because this is going to show you the journal entry that Sage Intacct is going to do for you on your behalf. So you'll notice I've got my underbilling and my revenue adjustment here. This project's overbilled, so my revenue is being decreased, and so on and so forth. The nice thing about this is per project. So now in reports, I can see per project with my WIP revenue adjustment how things are looking, which is awesome because most of the time when we're doing a WIP adjustment, it's just an aggregate of all the projects together. We're not doing it on a project by project basis. And this is doing it project by project. So again, giving you more information, it's giving you more visibility into your projects. And now you've got the history of how a project has ebbed and flowed throughout its time. And this is going to be great for reports that show profit fade. So you can really see what happened on a particular project very easily. All right. Once I'm feeling good about this particular WIP and I feel like I'm ready to finalize it, I'm going to come back in here. At that point, I can come in here and hit post. And then it's going to post this journal entry that we see in here. Okay, it's going to post that. So this is going to post as of 12/31/2022, and it's going to reverse as of 1/1/2023. And that again was based on my WIP management settings. Okay, once it's posted, don't worry if for some reason you need to reverse that. You can. You'll be able to reverse that, make changes to this WIP again, and post it again. And Sage Intacct will do that for you. So it's not like, hey, once you post it, it's done, it's locked down. No, you still have some flexibility. Again, as long as you have the correct security rights to do so. All right. So let me come back over here. Okay, one thing I do want to cover real quick is the errors and the warnings. If for some reason you're missing a value in one of these columns, so for example, you don't have a value in cost to complete, or so like I'm going to take this amount out here. You'll notice right away it gave me an error, and the error is this can't be zero. You can't have no costs because you actually have some cost to date in here. So this can't be zero if you have costs, right? You have to at least have the same amount of costs in this field here. So my costs are $289, $497.90. At a minimum, I have to have at least this in the cost area. Okay. All right. So,
Olivia,
yes.
one question that came in is, do you have to finalize one by one, or can you do multiple?
You can do multiple. However, the revenue earned is going to be different as you finalize them. So just kind of keep that in mind.
Perfect.
So here I have the costs less than the actual cost. So it's saying, hey, it's 105% complete. As we all know, we can't have a job more than 100% complete. So it's giving me an error and a warning, letting me know of that. So then that way I can make the adjustment. Okay. All right. One other item I want to make you aware of. Because this calculates your year-to-date over/under billing, the first thing you have to do is create a work in progress schedule for the end of the prior year. So we are in 2024. If you have any projects that have crossed the year from 23 or before into 24, you're going to want to create a WIP schedule as of December 2023. The reason for that is because you want Sage Intacct to calculate what that earned revenue was through December 2023. So then that way you don't have these crazy looking over/under billing amounts. Like here, I've got this year-to-date under billing of 3 million. Well, I don't really have that, right? It's probably a lesser amount, but that's because for the year, I've only got 13 million that has been billed, right? Because maybe some of it was billed in a prior year. So you'll want to do that first. You do not need to post that. You don't have to post that end of year WIP schedule in order for this to affect these other ones. So don't be nervous. Don't think, well, I already finished my financials for the end of last year. I don't want to create this WIP and then post it. You don't have to post it. Sage Intacct just needs you to create it and finalize it, and then it'll start to calculate these earned and over/under billing values properly. All right. If you want to get more information on the new WIP management functionality, then I would definitely check out this help article. It explains in detail all the different columns, how the WIP works, how to set it up, what the errors mean. The errors are pretty self-explanatory, but if you're confused at all, they give a little bit more information. So I definitely would recommend checking it out. And now is time for questions. So if you have any questions about what we've covered in today's training session, just please type them in the box and we'll get them answered.
I got two questions here. So thank you for those that are putting the questions in. The first one is, we had a mid-year transition from our old software to Sage Intacct, that if there is a historical job cost that is not shown, what if there is a historical job cost that's not showing up? So I think I got that said the best I could.
Okay, yeah, I think what you mean is you put in the cost through 2024 at some point in 2024, so you don't have the costs in as of December of 23. So what we'd want to do is we'd want to make an adjustment for those jobs that have crossed over from prior year into this current year. So then that way the revenue is calculated properly. Otherwise, it's going to look wacky here with this over/under billing. And that's something that your Sage Intacct consultant could help you with so that it shows up properly on your WIPs in 24.
Awesome. I think that if that does not answer your question, please let me know, but I appreciate you answering that one, Olivia. Then the second one is so they're not seeing the WIP management on their menus. Is there something that needs to be done?
Yes, so again, you'll want to make sure that first in project configurations it's configured, and then second, make sure your security role has access to the new WIP management functionality. And again, that can be done when you go into the roles, go into the projects application, hit subscription, and make sure that the WIP management options are selected inside security.
I think That is all the questions that came in. Well, perfect. Olivia, thank you so much for putting this together. You spent a long time making sure that you had all the information. I really want to thank you for putting this together today and doing this presentation to everyone.
Thank you everyone for attending. I know you're going to love this WIP functionality. It's real exciting. And if you have any questions, just reach out to your ETHOSystem consultant.